Ms. Sohn, I have had continuing concerns about you from your previous two hearings, and my concerns are only increased during this hearing. This is a hugely important position. It relates to free speech in America, it relates to liberty, it relates to elections. It encompasses so much. And I think you have demonstrated here and through your actions that you are a far-left partisan whose public record demonstrates a profound lack of judgment, lack of candor, professionalism, and very importantly, temperament needed to be an FCC chairman or an FCC commissioner. And by the way, there are all these talks about smears, character assassinations, vitriol. The chairman mentioned that. I'm simply going to ask you about your statements. And if there's any vitriol in this hearing, it's coming from your words, not our words. So let me begin by an issue that's directly in your wheelhouse, if you were confirmed. You said, quote, "For all my concerns about Facebook, I believe that Fox News has had the most negative impact on our democracy. It is state-sponsored propaganda." Now, millions of people watch Fox News. I happen to be one of them. Before Fox News came on the air, there was very little conservative voices. So do you still believe Fox News is state-sponsored propaganda? And if they came before you as a commissioner, you certainly would recuse yourself, wouldn't you? I mean, this is not just a minor statement. You are calling them the most negative impact on our democracy and state-sponsored propaganda. Is MSNBC state-sponsored propaganda?
So Fox News, actually, the FCC doesn't have jurisdiction over Fox News. And just
If the FCC or any of its entities came before, if Fox News or any related entity came before the FCC, would you recuse yourself?
No. In fact,
Why?
I help Fox Broadcasting.
Answer
I help Fox Network actually get on the air.
Do you know, when you call something state-sponsored propaganda, isn't that a little bit of a bias? The answer is yes.
Conversation,
Come on,
no.
be direct.
Let me, Senator, if I may. I was talking about, I was in the context of a Section 230 hearing where folks were talking about disinformation on platforms. And the point that I was making in that tweet was that the government, if the government's going to look at platforms, they also need to look at Fox News.
I think, look, I have a lot of questions for you, and I'm going to try to be respectful, but I also, if I think you're filibustering, I'm going to cut you off. I think when you call an entity having one of the most negative impacts on our democracy and state-sponsored propaganda, and you have control over speech, that's a giant problem. And it certainly shows a lack of judgment and a bias. So, by the way, a bias on conservative views. Let me go to another issue that's very troubling to me, and it's your open disdain for Republicans, okay? Now, you've said, quote, "Republicans know that the only way they can win an election is to suppress the vote." Wow, that's not my view. That's not the view of Republicans here. The only way Republicans can win is to suppress the vote. You also said, maybe, quote, "maybe next elections, Republicans will stop beating up on gays and women." I mean, do you understand how just ridiculously infuriating statements like this are? You are ripping half of the country. Do you realize that?
So let me address the one about,
now, just answer my question. Do you apologize for these statements? By the way, and when people say this has nothing to do with the FCC, baloney. This is about free elections. You are saying you think Republicans want to suppress the vote. Do you understand how offensive these kind of statements are? And by the way, how untrue they are. These aren't retweets. These are your statements. You want to talk about vitriol for America? This is pouring gas on American partisanship.
Senator, let her answer the question.
Senator,
I want to get to two more people.
Yeah, I've admitted that some of my tweets were sharp and more partisan than I would even prefer. However, that tweet in particular was in reaction to what happened in Harris County, Texas, where the Republican leadership shut down drive-through voting. And that, again, has nothing to do, that was my
Madam Chair,
opinion.
I have another question.
So you have to have the context.
Actually, you do, but you don't, right? I mean, you're making a statement, Republicans know the only way they can win an election is to suppress the vote. It's offensive. And it is, and it goes to your character, goes to your judgment. Let me just mention one other, and then I'm going to come back in round two. You keep saying that you're, quote, baffled by opposition by police forces. Baffled. And I know we've talked about it. The National Association of Police Organizations, they're very against you. And it's not because of the security of information. It's retweeting things like armed goons and riot gear, defunding the police. They're saying it's profoundly concerning to us that a nominee for the commissioner of the FCC has harbored such an openly and hostile and defamatory views of the police. I was just out with the Anchorage PD doing a ride-along recently. Why on earth would you be baffled by their opposition when you are making statements or supporting statements that are so derogatory? It's obvious why. Because you're coming at them so hard. Why would you be baffled?
I'm baffled because there's 11, out of 18,000 tweets of mine, there's 11 tweets. Most of them were, police brutality is bad. Police shouldn't have tanks and be in armored vehicles.
Armed goons?
What's that?
Armed goons?
Okay, well, again,
You're baffled that they're opposing you after you call them armed goons?
that's one tweet out of 18,000.
It's one tweet enough to make you disqualified, in my view. And the law enforcement in America right now is undergoing profound challenges. And it is also remarkable, you mentioned it, that the FCC doesn't have a lot of authority over law enforcement, but that law enforcement is coming out so strongly against you. And it's because you're driving a narrative that is so harmful to them. And by the way, it's untrue. They're not armed goons, they're heroes. And you ought to apologize for all of these.
Senator Sullivan, thank you.